Dr. Mohammed Obaidullah as a lead research and will delivering some knowledge to us related to Zakat for inclusive development. Okay, because the time is not much enough, please Dr. Obaidullah to share the material in this session. Time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And a very good morning to all the participants. Thank you for the brief introduction. And in this presentation, a short presentation, and I would be specifically focusing on use of technology in Zakat management, and for Zakat organizations, what is the potential that exists, and specifically, since there are dedicated sessions on the application of blockchain technology, I would not be dealing with that, except perhaps a very general discussion. And primarily, I'll be looking at the use of artificial intelligence in Zakat management. So again, let me underline this fact that this is an area which is grossly underutilized, and if you look around, you really don't see much of the real life application so far. But again, that doesn't mean that we are stuck there. We are moving very fast towards adopting these new and emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence. And my presentation would be basically looking at the potential areas and how AI can help us enhancing the efficiency of the Zakat sector. So if you look at some of the trends in the recent past, we can see that there has been a continuous effort on the part of the Zakat sector, continuous drive to enhance its efficiency. Now, if you can call it the first level of efficiency, we first moved from individual Zakat management to institutional Zakat management. In fact, even today, if you look around, there are many countries, including perhaps something that comes to my mind straight away is India, which has the second largest Muslim population in the world. It still has, individual Zakat management. It has not moved towards the first level of efficiency itself, that is individual to institutional. And there is enough evidence now, till date, in different countries, that you certainly enhance your efficiency by moving from individual to institutional. And then again, there are countries where the Zakat sector still, we find the cost of mobilization of Zakat is reasonably high as compared to others, primarily because of the reason that a large portion of the Zakat is non-monetary in nature. And because of that, they do incur additional costs, which makes the whole, process somewhat inefficient as compared to a system and economy like Indonesia, for example, where much of the Zakat is in the nature of monetary Zakat. The third kind of transformation, I can call it, which can enhance efficiency in a very significant leap, is the move from cash to digital. Now, again, cash is still the king in many parts of the globe, but still, as we move towards digital Zakat management, there is a growing evidence that we can save our costs, we can make the processes more faster, quicker, more efficient. So again, we would be looking at higher level of efficiency as we move from cash to digital. Now, primarily because cash has certain pain points, and though cash is very simple, cash is very familiar, and we all are used to making our payment in cash. But it is certainly, when you are talking about distribution of zakat, for example, in a region which is hit by a natural calamity, and you are going for distributing zakat to such regions, of course, carrying a lot of cash is going to be bulky. It is going to be unsafe. There may be attempts to burgle, and so safety becomes a critical consideration as well. And the sheer size of the cash you have to carry for distribution, again, that has its own cost. Again, with cash, it's very difficult, very hard to trace the internal leakages. Within the Zakat organization, if there are leakages, if there are we call it immoral insider, then it's very hard to monitor because there is authentication of payments and tracking of payments and monitoring of payments becomes that much more difficult. And finally, one point about digital zakat payment, which stands out very strongly, is more behavioral. Now, if you look at certain countries or certain regions where zakat is paid, often the zakat recipient, the beneficiaries, the mustahikun, they have to wait in long queues. They have to be physically present there, and they have to wait for cash to be disbursed. Now, this can often vitiate against the self-respect and the dignity of the beneficiaries, of the people, because of which many self-respecting, needy individuals might not really come forward to stand in the queue and to wait for zakat distribution to take place. Now, this can certainly be taken care of in a digital environment where you have, online, a digital receipt or online credit to the account of the beneficiary is a much more welcome proposition than making a physical appearance or waiting. And as we know, digital payments, they involve authorization and user authentication, ensuring that cash does reach the intended beneficiary. We are actually paying to the person that we want to pay. And that can be very easily tracked with the authorization process and the authentication process. That goes by default with the digital payment system. And the digital environment will also ensure the integrity of data. Whatever data is being collected with respect to the beneficiaries, there is, it's much easier to ensure the immutability and the, non-tamperability of the data. The possibility of tampering the data can be minimized in a digital environment, which is, of course, becomes a very big challenge when we are talking about a non-digital or a cash or a non-monetary, zakat distribution. Again, there are inbuilt mechanisms can be placed which will ensure the zakat organization against theft or the internal leakages, as we just talked about. And in a digital environment, every single payment can be accounted for, can be tracked, and thereby we can minimize the possibility of corruption. Now, when we move from cash to digital in disbursement of zakat, there are two key operational requirements that I would like to underline. The first is the digital infrastructure itself, which means that if you are moving for digital distribution of zakat, let's say in a region which is hit by a natural calamity, again, this could be a major challenge that you don't have the financial service providers, you have the bank servers there working for you, keeping track of your payments and so on, so forth, and you need ATMs or the presence of the agent network there on the ground. So this whole network, the whole infrastructure is a prerequisite for, zakat payment in a digital manner. And at the same time, you need mobile phone coverage, ownership of the coverage, you need the device and also the coverage. Both have to be there, and that is something that is inherently part of the infrastructure that you need. And if you don't have this on ground, then obviously you have to incur a huge cost as upfront setup cost to create the infrastructure there, which is not easy, which is going to be costly. And the second thing is, which is, I would say, perhaps more important, is again behavioral which relates to the preparedness of the beneficiary himself. Or the mustahikun, are they ready to receive zakat in a digital way? And are they prepared enough? There you have to really look at certain questions. Are there certain groups like disabled, like elderly people, people who are grossly illiterate, both in a digital way, otherwise, and they would be particularly disadvantaged if we are using high technology. So technology has to be simple, easy to understand, and something that they can work with, they are comfortable with. Now, we also have to address these questions. Is there an increase or decrease in security threats to participants, to the staff, and to the partners who are part of the zakat management process with the introduction of digital zakat transfers? And finally, is control and access of zakat transfers, has it really improved or made worse by the introduction of new technologies? In fact, this is anecdotal evidence, or I will not call it evidence, but opinion of many of the players in the zakat industry as of now, that maybe we are not ready for the blockchain technology because it's not really needed as of now. Now, I will reserve my opinion on this, but what they are pointing out is that maybe the zakat recipients, the zakat payers, are not quite ready to adopt to the digital environment which is created by application of blockchain technology. Maybe our platforms can still operate for some time, or till the stakeholders are ready for it. Now, again, this is a viewpoint that needs to be given its due. Are the stakeholders ready for these new technologies? We're talking about very high-tech environment, and where beneficiaries and zakat payers are not simply ready for it, then perhaps the efficiency enhancement that you are looking at is not going to materialize. Again, in the following slides, I'll be looking, as I said in the beginning, that we are looking at the potential use of technology, and primarily for the artificial intelligence that we will be focusing on. And we will be talking about the identity, the digital identity issue, which is very relevant for the muzakki, for the zakat payers, and also for the mustahiq or zakat recipients. And we also see how artificial intelligence can help us to address the risk of muzakki attrition, which is the loss of the muzakki population or the existing muzakki, existing donors by a zakat organization. And there is enough evidence available that you almost incur double the cost in attracting a new muzakki or a new zakat payer as compared to to servicing an existing muzakki, somebody who has been paying zakat through you. It is that much easier, and the cost is that much low if you are trying to give him good service, and you can categorize them as one of the satisfied lot, one of the satisfied population who would come to you for repeat zakat payments, for recurring zakat payments. So therefore, the muzakki attrition risk, what we call, or the issue of client satisfaction, the issue of muzakki satisfaction perhaps can be better addressed with AI, as we shall see later with some examples. Similarly, when we're talking about mustahiq targeting, the classification of the mustahiq into the different categories of asnaf, then we exercise our priorities, which is allowed by the Sharia to basically target certain categories of mustahiqun who are eligible according to the Sharia. And for this, again, artificial intelligence can be of use, as we shall see in a couple of examples. Now, first, the issue of digital identity. Now, we know that identity of the beneficiary is very critical, especially more so in the context of zakat payments, where the identity of the beneficiary is extremely important for applying the Sharia norms regarding eligibility itself. So we would be flouting Sharia norms if you're paying to the wrong guy. So the identity of the guy, identity of the beneficiary becomes very critical to ascertain, to authenticate, and also we don't want to create a dependency culture. None of the zakat organizations they vote in favor of this, they would try to make sure that the mustahiqun, they progress out of poverty, or there is a transformation that is taking place from mustahiq to muzakki, which basically requires uh, an ability or the technical competency to be able to monitor the impact, to be able to monitor every single mustahiq which has benefited, who has benefited from the zakat payment, that how his economic condition is going to change. So if you want to monitor that, we need the identity. We need to be sure about the identity of the beneficiary of the zakat. Now, when eligibility is concerned, again, there are two ways of looking at it. One is the digital, simply a digital identity. It applies more in the context of internally displaced persons who may not have the national identity cards readily available with them, but you have to distribute your zakat. They deserve to receive it, and they must be given the top priority because they're hit by, let's say, national calamity, and they don't have the papers. So you have to quickly establish an identity for them, and the digital identity may be as simple as a random number or a token, which is assigned to an individual, and this identity may not be linked to anything intrinsic about the individual. It's primarily for the purpose of keeping track of the distribution to the deserving people. But when we are talking about, the normal circumstances where we are paying zakat to the deserving recipients, and we have to be very sure of who they are and what are their needs, whether they qualify to receive zakat or not. We need to be very sure about the real identity. So, but the real identity itself can be digitized. For example, the KYC requirements, the entire thing could be digitized, and the artificial intelligence can help us to smoothen, to quicken the process of authentication of the real identity if it is in a digitized form. So it's very important to meet the KYC norms as they're imposed by regulators across different regions, different nations. They could vary, but certainly the authentication of the real identity is fastened, is quickened in a digitized environment. And as often we hear about the concerns of the regulators, they are concerned about the need to fight money laundering, the need to fight financial crimes. Therefore, the identity of the muzakki also becomes very important to ascertain, and the KYC requirements are very important. But as we can see in a digitized environment, this can be done at a much more efficient way. Now, the issue of identity is indeed considered very important. Also, it is included in the SDGs. We have the SDG 16.9, which basically underlines the need to ensure that every individual has, has identity, and they have free and low-cost access to widely accepted robust identity credentials. And since such legal identity can be provided far more quickly and widely by not requiring prior determination of nationality. This is one view that exists within the SDG circle, that you don't really have to, bring in the national identity for a variety of SDGs that you want to achieve, that you want to address these concerns. So even if it is delinked with the national identity, but still every individual must have an identity, and the robust identification of that identity is directly related to at least 10 clusters, which include social protection, which is what Zakat aims to achieve. And we can very easily see there that when we map Maqasid al-Sharia to SDGs, that this is social protection is certainly one of the major SDG concerns, which is also a Maqasid related concern, and Zakat funds could be legitimately targeted for this. Therefore, we can see that the issue of digital identity has to be seen in the right perspective, the importance of it, and the need to make it more efficient. And we have come across certain very useful use cases in blockchain-based digital identity, which was used for Syrian internally displaced persons by these two organizations, EdTech, and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. In a pilot project, they use this, and this particular way of distribution of zakat, distribution of support to the internally displaced person was taken care of with far greater efficiency. Sorry. Now, let's start with very quickly, have an overview of artificial intelligence and what it can do for zakat management. Artificial intelligence is basically the use of computers to mimic the cognitive functions of the humans. We human beings, we see, we listen, we relate, we analyze, we take decisions. So if all these functions, the cognitive functions, can be mimicked by artificial intelligence, by computers, then we call it artificial intelligence that has replaced, that has substituted human intelligence. Now, computers, again, to display this artificial intelligence, they need data, all kinds of data. Just as human beings, to perform our cognitive function, we look beyond numbers. So computers are not just about numbers. And they're, in this particular case, they're mimicking human beings. So they have to be able to listen to the words. They have to see things. So there is computer vision, there is text analytics, that is, natural language processing. So all these are data for the computers: words, texts, images, gestures. These are all information for them, and they convey information to the computer. And when the computers, they seek to relate data, all these different forms of data, analyze data, compute, and make decisions, they use what we call algorithms. Now, very quickly, again, we'll see what the machine learning or the artificial intelligence, different times, different terms have been more popularly used. So currently, we can say that machine learning and the ML applications, they are currently involved. And this is what is very briefly, I take you through the machine learning concepts at a very conceptual level. It is a self-improving algorithm, which is a way of achieving artificial intelligence without being explicitly programmed. Now, without machine learning, we'll be needing a lot of hard coding, which obviously involves a lot of cost, time, and resources. And machine learning is a kind of self-improving algorithm, and it tries to avoid the cost involved with hard coding. And primarily, the outcomes of machine learning is prediction and classification. And this could be supervised or unsupervised. In supervised learning, it is more popular, more common. This is fast, accurate, more commonly used. It takes data as input, which is called training data, which includes both inputs and labels, which are targets. And then the data scientist trains the model with lots of training data, the inputs and targets on both these variables. And then with the new data and the logic it gets, then the output is predicted. That's how supervised learning works. And in unsupervised learning, the training data doesn't include targets. The system has to understand where to go from the data given. It has to understand the patterns in the data all by itself. Now, here is an example. We talked about outcomes. Two outcomes: one is prediction, another is classification. And both have their use in zakat management. Now here, first looking at the supervised learning, we can use regression for predicting the continuous response value, which is, let's say, the variables of, related to the gold prices, which can affect our zakat liability in future. It can relate to silver prices of stocks we are holding, or the value of inventories that a businessman is holding, the agricultural produce, the prices, the valuation of that, the lease rental rates. Now, all these are continuous response values. They're variables which take continuous values. Now, for predicting such values, we use regression techniques, and you have a very simple algorithm before you, which can calculate which estimates zakat current and for the future. When we are looking at the future, obviously we're looking at our ability to predict, and machine learning can do this job with reasonable degree of accuracy. Then we look at ML for classification. There are two kinds of broad classifications. One is binary classification, where we get two answers basically, yes or no. And the examples of, you can see the applications right here, that is individual A in the poor category of Mustahik or not? It's a very simple question. The answer could be yes or no. Or individual B is in a traveler in a Sabil category of Mustahik or not? Yes or no. Are donors to platform Z, are they satisfied lot or they are dissatisfied? Again, very clear distinction between two categories. Will donors to platform Y, they will revert as repeat donors or not? Again, this answer could be, we can get using ML in a binary classification. Is individual C going to default? Let's say there is a Zakat fund which is giving Khardeh Sana loans. Now, even before giving the loans, we can try to predict the outcome, yes or no, in terms of whether he's going to default or not. It could be predicted with different degrees of certainty, but the answers will be yes or no. And finally, a very simple question: is this the picture of brother A or not? Now, this again, ML can help classify you in terms of getting yes or no answers. But you may like to have fine-tune your answers, or see them in multiple classes rather than just two classes. You can aim for multi-class classification, which will classify the data set into very high, moderate, low, very low. This is just an example. So you can perhaps seek answers to questions like, what are the chances that a transaction by individual E will prove to be a fraudulent one? Now, fraud detection applications are plenty, but in this particular case, you can always see, what are the chances of fraud by a particular individual.
I'm sorry, Doctor, 2 minutes left.
Okay, I'll try to move faster. What are the chances that a Zakat beneficiary receiving certain skills will be able to transform himself into a Muzakki entrepreneur? And these are all probabilistic outcomes, and we may like to classify these into different categories. What are the chances that project D will utilize Zakat funds in the Sharia stipulated way? Again, it could be very high, moderate, low, very low. Now, this is the this is the unsupervised ML, which is used for clustering and anomaly detection, where basically we have given certain questions and comments, certain text. Let's say on a Zakat portal, we should be able to cluster them into pair types. Now here the level is not determined in beforehand. This is something that after looking at the clusters, we try to figure out what are the types of pairs. Can we classify them into certain clusters? Or is there any anomaly or an outlier which doesn't belong to the group? Similarly, given the set of tweets on a volunteering portal, we can look for clusters which are based on content of tweets. Now this could come out as a satisfied lot or unsatisfied lot, or similarly the Zakat portal, the pair types could be those who are induced by tax benefits, or who are basically seeing the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they don't look at any material benefits. Now the outcome could be anything. After you cluster them, then you try to figure out what are the characteristics of the clusters. And then given what's the forwards, for example, in a given university community group, can we cluster the senders into different types? Okay. Again, there is a possibility. This is something that we should not, we should be always aware of as Zakat managers, that there is always a possibility of errors with artificial intelligence, prediction and classification errors. For example, we are trying to go for a 4-way classification. We are going to classify somebody as poor or not. We'll get 4 outcomes, for example, 4 possible outcomes that our machine will give us. It will classify a poor as a poor, a non-poor as a non-poor, a poor as a non-poor, and a non-poor as a poor. So the first 2, we can see that it is doing the correct classification, and the 3rd and 4th, it is making an error. But what is the cost of the error? When we classify a mustahiq, a poor as a non-poor, obviously we are depriving them from zakat. Now imagine, perhaps in the zakat case, the consequence is not so devastating for the beneficiary. It could be all as well. But imagine what will happen if we use the same artificial intelligence logic for, let's say, a classification error that we get in the treatment of a COVID-19 patient. where an infected patient is diagnosed as healthy and is not going to receive his treatment, or a cancer patient, for example, which is wrongly categorized as healthy. So obviously, this is going to cost us huge, and we have to be, as managers, we have to be aware. But fortunately, in the Islamic finance field and the Zakat field, the cost of AI error are not as fatal as in the domain of healthcare. Again, this is perhaps the last slide because of time constraint. AI applications in the post-pandemic new normal. This is the crux of my presentation, that the post-pandemic new normal is going to be, we are all going to live in an environment perhaps where social distancing is going to stay, and we are going to see the merits in minimizing human cognition and human contact. So in every sphere. So to the extent this can be, and artificial intelligence is specifically tries to achieve this very outcome, that it substitutes human cognition and minimizes the need for human interaction. So this could be AI applications may include one or more of the following processes, as we just discussed briefly before. Natural language processing. You don't have to full AI applications there, a full range. You can actually apply AI to part of the processes like speech-to-text conversion, or the translation, for example, of text, response articulation and conversion to speech. You have intelligent chatbots who can actually have or fully interactive voice assistant systems for Zakat advisory and estimation. And you can do feel-good or sentiment analysis where your Zakat donors are, how do they feel after paying Zakat from the text or speech, and also full interactive voice assistant systems for Zakat beneficiaries. They can be, basically engaged and told whether they deserve to receive Zakat and why they, do or do not deserve, and so on and so forth. Again, this is another, that's the last slide again. This is the application of computer vision. Again, we see its application for when we try to do a KYC from home. Let's say a Muslimah doesn't want to visit the bank branch or the financial service provider branch. You can always, the authentication can take place of the mustahiq in the context of a zakat or in the context of a bank client. It can always, KYC can take place with computer vision, where the computer matches, let's say, that the photograph on one of your, identity documents with your, let's say, selfie that you quickly send to the Zakat organization. The computer can match these two and to basically, give the verdict whether you are the same person or not. The Muzakki identity Amil identification authentication for work from home, and numerous other creative use cases and applications. And again, as with any technology, there are always ethical issues. There is the issue of system accountability. There is the issue of data privacy, and there is the issue of possible bias in training data, which can lead to many other forms of bias. Inshallah, during the question and answer session, if there is time, we will get into these issues. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share.